that's up on 288.
It's close to, it's in Chesterfield, but it's in close to Powhatan.
That's right. That's up on the other side. That's the other end of the county.
Yeah,
from me.
yeah, yeah.
Yep. In fact, I think it's like I know it's over 30. It might be close to a 40-minute drive.
Really?
All right, we'll go ahead and call together today's meeting. This is the Amherst County Service Authority meeting. Time now is 1:30 p.m. Today is April 1st, 2025. Happy April Fools. The first item we have is the approval of the agenda. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion on the floor by Mr. Martin. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Next item we have citizen concerns and comments. We'll open the floor to citizen concerns.
There are none registered to speak.
Nobody wants to roll up? All right. Moving on, employee recognitions. You want me to hand that over to you?
Could we, the employee is on his way.
Okay. You want to circle
Wait,
back to
wait.
that one?
We could circle back to that. That would be
Okay, we can do that.
fantastic. Thank you.
Board, that work for y'all? All right, move it on. Next item we have is the consent agenda. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion on the floor by Mr. Woods. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Next, we have a special presentation for the draft budget and
Financial presentation?
Yes, sir.
I'm going to bring our experts. They come from more than 50 miles away and carry briefcases. And they're going to put together a pro forma.
oh man, you don't have to stand for this one.
Yeah, thank goodness. Back is all right. Is this on? Is this on?
Yes, it is.
Okay. All right. Good afternoon. Thank you all for having us. I'm R.T. Taylor with Davenport and Company. This is my colleague Roland Cooch. We've been working together for over 2 decades. We've been servicing the county and the service authority for over a decade, probably close to almost 2 decades,
Yeah,
right?
my history goes back to 2000 in that range.
So,
Back when Dan French was here.
that's right. So we've been doing this for many, many years. We have evolved to the point where we usually do this annual update around this time each year. I think the past couple years, y'all have been going through a couple changes on your financials, one of which was switching from a calendar year basis to a fiscal year basis ending June 30. In addition to that, the county and the service authority went through a system change. So there was, call it some interim reporting that we did in the meantime, but we're here to sort of re-engage and go through the full comprehensive review since we now have a full year of audited financial results from 2024 fiscal year. Okay? All right, so you have the books in front of you. The page numbers are in the bottom right-hand corner. And if you want to keep it conversational as we go through it, if you have any questions, just let us know. We're happy to stop and address those along the way, or you can hold them to the end and we can come back to it. It's up to y'all how y'all want to do it. So this is our annual update. One of the reasons why we started doing this with the service authority was that you all as an entity wanted to do something where you would have something, a tool to identify any, call it challenges up the road, try to avoid as best you can any kind of sticker shock moments with respect to your rate base. And so this plan solves for level rate increases to cover a couple things, one of which is your capital needs going forward that are projected out. And congratulations to you all for going through that big master comprehensive study plan that y'all have the vision for how you want the system to evolve. That has been incorporated in here both short-term and long-term needs, as you'll see here shortly. Also keep in mind that we have a couple key financial ratios that we target, one of which is a bond covenant requirement for some of your debt outstanding with the Virginia Resources Authority. And that is after you take operating revenues minus operating expenditures, you have what's called net revenues available for debt service. And you're required to have at least $1.15 of that versus for every dollar of debt service you have, okay? The other financial target we hit, page 2, is we have long targeted 50% are non-designated revenues, our flexible cash reserves and equivalents. We try to keep that as measured at the end of each fiscal year. We try to have that hit 50% of our budget, okay? And there has been some discussions over the past couple of years that, is that really enough? We're on the smaller side of authorities. Bigger authorities are able to address material movements, whether it's macroeconomic or global changes going on that impacts the economy, et cetera, or something as like you had back in 2018 and 2019 where you really had to come out of pocket for some unexpected CIP needs, and you pull those straight out of reserve, so that brings down your cookie jar, and we want to be prepared for that. So as measured at the end of each fiscal year, y'all have stayed above that 50% level, but during the fiscal year, as you're paying your monthly expenses and collecting bi-monthly on your revenues, there are dips and peaks where your cash flow gets a little bit lower throughout the fiscal year. So setting an aspirational target, maybe getting to 75% non-designated revenues to your budget may make sense, again, to have a bigger war chest, if you will. Okay? We haven't solved for that in here, so the rate increases you see in the scenarios that we'll eventually get to, they still solve for these minimum level targets, not the aspirational targets, just so you know. If you would, turn with me to page 3. As we have done historically, we go out and get the data that used to be compiled by Draper Aden. Now Draper Aden sold out to TRC. They are behind on getting the 2024 report published, so we are using the 23 report for comparison. And what you'll see here is that ACSA's average residential water bill is higher than the median, but you're still lower than 5 of the 14 similar-sized entities. And when you compare yourselves to Bedford Regional Water Authority and Campbell County Utilities and Service Authority, I think that's who we really consider our nearby neighbors or competitors. We're right in the middle with respect to our monthly water bill. Connection fees, it's similar. You are actually well below on connection fees, less than half of the average of comparable sized utilities in Virginia. You're 3/4 of the average, actually. For your availability fees, you are above the average for similar sized utilities in Virginia, but you're still 3/4 of what the average is for the two MSA authorities, Bedford and Campbell. I think you'll see in I just want to point this out, and this will be applicable to sewer as well, but you'll see under the facility/capacity fee column, there are a lot of NAs. So when we're stacking ourselves up in this manner, I'd say that that's probably the least comparable of everything, because not everybody reports it, so we don't have all the data. But just take that in, for food for thought as you're kind of comparing yourselves to others, okay? Similarly, on the next page, page 4, wastewater, comparable rates and fees. Your wastewater system is based on your water flows out, distribution. 100% is assumed to come back into the system and it's treated. And given that the average residential wastewater bill is higher than the average of the 13 similar size utilities across the Commonwealth, but you are lower, you're lower than 5 of the 13. ACSA's average water bill is higher than CCUSA, Campbell, and just under Bedford. Connection fees are well below the average, again, further below the average for the two MSA authorities, and then also you are higher than the average for similar size, but below the average for the two MSA authorities. And again, that capacity/facility fee, they just don't get all the data. Not everybody reports that data to the TRC folks. All right, page 5, And this is setting up to get into the, call it the budget or pro forma discussion. The authority determined that a June 30 fiscal year basis would better align with the county's financial reporting cycle. So y'all did that conversion process during the calendar year 22-23 timeframe. Therefore, the fiscal year 2024 audit was the first full year of fiscal year results. Based on that, and based on the report we did on the interim basis that I mentioned at the outset of this conversation, we were asked to come in and provide the board with some projected rate increases during that interim period where our financial information may be a little bit murky based on switching between calendar years and fiscal years and changing systems. So what we were able to do is load in our model, the data we had available from trial balances, et cetera, loaded that in. It wasn't audited information, but we got comfortable with the information we were getting from, I guess, both financial systems and comparing them. And we projected at that time, rate increases for 2025 and beyond would be levelized at 6% for water and 7.5% for sewer. Subsequent to that report, I think the authority also entered into and completed a master plan identifying roughly $40 million of projects, including the upcoming AMI meter project. And additionally, in that FY25 budget adoption process, the plan we had laid out, I think everybody still wanted to take a moment and figure out, do we need to have our actual first full fiscal year of results before we implement new rate increases? And I think the decision was made at the authority level to sit tight on doing the plan, and no rate increases were implemented for budget 25. So what we're doing here in the pro forma is we're building off of our fiscal year 25 budget and trying to project out in 26 and beyond where the budget should be set and where we think we're growing. Page 6. So our assessment here is going to levelize as best we can rates in 26 and beyond. Still keeping in mind we have to hit our revenue bond covenant of 1.15 times coverage. Again, after operating revenues minus operating expenditures, we have to have at least $1.15 to cover every dollar of debt service. And as I mentioned earlier too, our minimum bogey for our cash, our flexible cash, we do not want to fall behind the 50% mark at year end. So all of these projections stay at or above those restraints. We're assuming a growth rate in expenditures that matches the historical CPI in 26 and beyond. And our estimated scenarios in here, they're preliminary, subject to change, I will say, but I think the key ingredient here is that some of these projections, y'all have some potential growth going on in the county. In particular on the commercial and industrial side, which you'll see in a minute. We've seen an uptick in, it's December, January, February of this, so December 24 and then January, February, and even maybe into March for 25, there has been an uptick in your commercial and industrial usage of the system, the water. So that could mitigate some rate increases in the future if that growth continues. And also better than expected results for 25. Again, we're using the 25 budget because we don't have actuals in front of us. So we're using what we feel comfortable with was the 25 budget, our base level, and projecting off of that. To the extent actual audited information for 25 comes in better, then obviously that would also help mitigate any potential future rate increases. But we're here to set rates for 2026 budget, and we want to make sure that we do so in a conservative manner without going too conservative, right? So we're trying to take a measured approach to get there. All right? Mr. Perro, any questions? I know you just got here, so just if you want to catch up or anything real quickly.
I'm good. Please continue. Thanks.
Okay. All right. So again, we're going to be looking at making sure the operational budget is balanced at a minimum and that we will hit our targets operationally and for financial covenant purposes. On top of that, then, we have to fold in what we have identified as our capital improvement needs over the next decade, and I do mean decade. Right now, I think historically, we've at least looked out 5 years, but with the master plan that y'all took the time and effort to get done, and we think it makes sense to project out the 10 years. So in your report, they identified a short-term set of needs and a long-term set of needs. So what we've done is we've said these short-term needs are going to be funded over the next 3 to 5 years. On the long term, we said that's going to be in years 6 through 10. We haven't assumed that they all hit in year 6. We've stretched them out or prorated them over the course of that additional 5-year period or next 5-year period. So for short-term water and sewer recommended projects per that plan, approximately $8.8 million. And then on top of that, we've got, well, embedded in there too, but we broke it out for purposes visually here. The AMI meter project is estimated 2.7. So within the next 3 years or less, somewhere in that time frame, that could slide a little bit obviously, but the total projects we're assuming that we fund in the next few years is 11.5 million. And then for the long-term project side, we're taking that 28.9, or just round numbers, call it $30 million, and spreading that across fiscal years 31 to 35. And we're, again, at the bottom there, the very bottom bullet, for purposes of this analysis, these projects are assumed to be funded over that second 5-year period, resulting in a spend rate on infrastructure for the plan about $6 million a year. Okay? So a couple things that we're going to make assumptions about for all of these scenarios are laid out on this page. Y'all may recall that we did the interim financing at $7.5 million back in 2023. That was for the raw water intake. It was at the time, leading up to that point, it had always been indicated, I think, to everybody, the board, staff, and us as your consultants, that that was a mandated project. I think based on follow-up research thereafter, it was discovered that it wasn't necessarily mandated, and we didn't necessarily hit those levels that where it would require us or be mandated for us to hit. Is that fair?
That's fair.
So, based on that, I think last year we coordinated with your bond attorney, Paul Jacobson, with Sands Anderson, and Tim and Richard, for y'all to take action on a resolution that would make that pot of money available to you for other water and sewer projects. And I think the intent is, and you're going to see a couple scenarios in here, but I think where we land is roughly 3.82, or call it $4 million of those interim proceeds will be used towards some of these projects in the short term. And then by next March, when that short-term note comes due, we'll long-term finance that $4 million. The proceeds that remain in your bond account are going to be used to prepay that interim note. So then it flattens, okay? Any questions on that? Okay. And then lastly, the other interim note we financed was for the Gateway Sanitary Sewer Project. And y'all may recall that the county had agreed that they wanted to do that project, realized that it's the authority's assets and wheelhouse to put the infrastructure in, maintain it, et cetera. So they said they were willing to support the interest on the interim note. And I believe, and Tim can correct me if I'm wrong, y'all are in the process, or Tim is in the process of working on that memorandum of understanding that we all discussed at some point over the past couple of years, but in particular at the time we were doing that interim financing, is that something needed to be put in place to memorialize the county support for that project. And as we understand it, it's been delayed. So what you're going to see in the following pages is where we've, for purposes of trying to show where some assistance or contributions between revenues from the new development versus the county contributions, we've taken those old the build out of the plan and forward them to fiscal year 27. So we've kept the same assumptions, we've just pushed it out in time to assume that at some point the project gets off the ground and that some revenue is kicking off to the system for usage and some is kicking off to the county for improving on that land that's currently sitting, call it vacant, and at a small assessed value, but that should grow over time if it's truly developed out.
So, if I could ask a question?
Absolutely, please.
So, Mr. Castillo, so my understanding is the county said, okay, we're gonna go out and we're gonna borrow this money, $2.5 million to do the Gateway Sewer Project, and we're gonna, what I'm hearing is we were gonna cover the interest, the interim interest, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
About $100,000 a year for 3 years.
What?
About $100,000 a year for 3 years.
For 3 years,
Yes, sir.
all right.
So this
All
is
right.
this 26 year, fiscal year 26 for the county, and for your note would be the last year of that interim interest.
And then after that, it comes through the Service Authority.
Then it's got to be taken out long-term or paid off completely. And I think we haven't, correct me if I'm wrong, the monies that we borrowed for the Gateway that are sitting in SNAP, those monies have not really been spent in earnest.
None of those funds have been spent at this time.
Correct.
Or-
So,
Or anticipated to be spent.
so the option, you have options, right? And I think this is maybe where you're going, so I apologize for interjecting, where the $2.5 million note and the $2.5 million of proceeds sitting there could be used to just pay it off and be done, or you could move forward and long-term finance it to continue to develop that area into the future.
You are kind of going where I was going with it, but if we took that approach, then the county paid $300,000 over 3 years to have that money, right? And we didn't do anything with it, so we,
That's correct, but just keep in mind too, you've actually earned quite a bit of interest in that account.
No cost to the county.
so it wouldn't be?
No. The interest earned, there was the arbitrage which we dealt with last month.
Yep.
And it ends up being no cost to the county.
I don't want to get down into the weeds too much, but any progress report on this project? What I don't want to see happen is us go out and spend $2.5 million to do this project, right? And then he doesn't build anything.
Correct.
So there's no revenue coming in to support it, and we're paying back $2.5 million over 20 years, right?
Yes, sir.
We're on this, you and I are on the same page there.
Okay. We need to look very carefully at that before we spend any of that money, I would think.
No, I agree.
Okay, I'm so sorry,
No,
thank you.
You as a board had made that very clear when I started.
I think to put a, not to go off too far on a tangent here, and Mark can step in and provide some guidance, or maybe this is follow-up to just food for thought. Keep in mind, we gave that presentation both to the board side, the authority side and the county side about a service district, right? Which created some, it created the area, but document-wise, it also provided some CYA, for lack, I can't think of a better way to put it right now, but it provided some teeth to it, where if things didn't push along as expected by now, the developer would be on the hook if you assessed a fee, right? And I think at the time the decision was made to just enter into maybe a MOU with the developer directly as opposed to creating an additional service district. But that, I think, Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, we're not so far down the road that those lines couldn't be drawn to create a service district, correct?
Yes, I believe that, that's
Okay.
right, yeah.
So just keep that in mind, because what I think happens, and what could be a scenario, is that if you draw the lines and the developer continues to delay, then you could then decide to assess that fee, and he can decide to pay it or sell the land and have a new developer come in, right?
If we put it in place.
If you put it in place. So that was one of the key ingredients on our strategy presented at that time to help give you a little bit of coverage. I don't think we're out of play if that is determined to be the best path forward, though, so.
Yeah, go right ahead.
Wrong chairman, sorry. Thanks for this, but I think one of the major points is that was brought up by the director, Mr. Martin, is that the carrying cost is offset by the interest being generated. So it's got zero cash flow loss. However, there's an opportunity cost as we're going forward because construction is getting more expensive. Everything's getting more expensive. There'll be less value of that amount as we go forward. So please, we just need to keep that in mind. And at some point,
And I'll-
we'll
I'll be-
need to.
I'll be updating you in my informational report as to where that project is.
Okay, well, I'll look forward to that, but at some point, we'll need to we'll need to make a decision. Thanks.
And for now, what we have done, again, assumptions being what they are, we have assumed that you stayed the course and you have to long-term fund the $2.5 million. So that's built into here conservatively. That's the path we went down because we understand the county wants to provide new growth, new development in the county. So that was our approach here. And that applies to all the scenarios herein. And we would take out the interim financing one way or another by next March. And for our base fees there at the bottom, we are assuming that the water base fee increases by $1 annually starting in 2026. And then for the sewer base fee, $2.26, but then $1 annually thereafter. So that'll apply, again, across all scenarios, and I think, Tim, that measures up to what you have in your budget that you've developed.
That's correct.
So those are all scenarios, all assumptions that are gonna go across all those scenarios. Page 9, here's where the distinctions are. So for scenario 1, whatever the cause is, we did the amending resolution to give us more flexibility on that raw water intake project. Instead, we're gonna replace it with $7.5 million in other projects for water and sewer. That gets long-term funded by next March and gets applied to the projects or CIPs that we have outstanding. Scenario 2, we assume that interim note, that we only use about $4 million toward the AMI and the parallel feeder main from the water treatment plant projects that are laid out. And the balance of that interim note gets collapsed from the proceeds you currently have in your SNAP account. And then under scenario 2, we've also assumed that the total debt issue would be $12.8 million between the next 3 years. Scenario 3 builds on scenario 2. The real distinction there is that we layer in those projected revenues to both the authority and to the county. Again, there will be some overlapping period on the front end where you all build the infrastructure, you start collecting a little bit as the growth comes onto the system, and the county would supplement through contributions off the growth in the assessed value there until at which point they cross and the system is automatically covering the cost of the new development, basically. So that's the only difference between scenarios 2 and 3 is that scenario 2, we don't assume any of the new revenues from the development. Scenario 3, we assume new revenues from the development plus county contributions through the growth phase. Okay? All right. We threw this back.
I'm sorry, I
Yes.
don't
Yes,
get
sir.
that. So you're assuming the county's gonna supplement Gateway Sewer Project?
In
over
scenario
20.
3. Scenario 2, nobody's subsidizing anything. Scenario 3, we are, and it's based off of those same projections we showed a couple of years ago, which are on these next couple pages.
I think scenario 3 is a pretty big assumption.
I don't
Personally,
disagree.
okay.
Yes, sir.
That's just my personal opinion. Okay. Thank you
Duly
so
noted.
much. All right.
And duly, I agree. But we ran that scenario. We took the old assumptions that the developer provided back in '23. We rolled it forward, assuming they would start in '27 and beyond. And this particular page 11 shows the number of units by fiscal year and what type they are, the potential additional water and sewer revenues that would be generated as these come online as noted above in lines 1 through 5. The respective revenues generated are between lines 8 and 12. And not to get cute with anything and try to project out the related expenses, we simply took your operating margin basically and said, okay, you're gonna net about 45% of your revenues after operating expenses. So that's what could go. So in year one, for example, which is 2027, if you bring on those 2069, 1, and 28 units in 2027, that might generate $47,000 in '27 and so forth down the road. And you can see that as the system builds, more revenues should be generated in the water and sewer system. So that's on your own, but if you flip the page, page 12, over time, that assessed value of those base lots 1 and 2 that were combined for this development, the total combined assessed value, we're just assuming is roughly $368,900. That's an old number, that's a 2023 number, but again, to keep all this consistent, we did not mess with the baseline data. That will grow in value naturally. You can see line 8 grows naturally by 3%. Then on top of that, as that development gets built out, the assessed value should grow along with the added houses or whatever the units are, et cetera. And over time, the county will start collecting new real estate tax dollars on that property and on those new increasing assessed values. We still have the 61 cents in there. And the revenue from development on line 16, you can see there, goes from $72,000 on upwards. So there's some period of time in there where the system, the authority, is going to be growing its revenues, but not necessarily able to support the full load of the debt service related to the Gateway project on a long-term basis. The county's contributions could be covered in some portion thereof to help cover the debt service beginning in '27 from the increased assessed value growth. Does that make sense, or does it ring a bell from when we showed something like this a couple years ago? Okay. So that's what we've included, to your point, Mr. Martin, scenario 3, which may be a little bit ambiguous of how that's really going to pan out. Okay. The next couple pages are going to show you the summary of the scenarios we've run. We don't necessarily have to get into the detailed reports, but we wanted to show you the summary comparison on one page for water and remind you that in 2022, the rates were adopted as presented in our annual pro forma. Then in 2023, the first 6 months, based on our report though, no action was taken to increase those rates. So we had presented a report, we had laid out what we think the rate increases should be, and no action was taken, I think, again, because that was during that period of time where you all were switching between fiscal year, calendar year, and fiscal year, and the system change. Fiscal year 2024, we presented that report in '23 ahead of the '24 budget. That's where we used some interim data from your financial systems and projected out rate increases, and we landed on a 5.5% increase to water rates at that time. We also showed in that report some rate increases for FY25, but I think, again, that's where I think the decision was made at the authority level to, we'll sit tight until we have a full fiscal year of audited financials in front of us, which would be at the end of '24. All right, so looking down at the cases or summary, I think scenario 1, I think we can all agree that that's really a non-starter. We decided we're not going to spend all that $7.5 million right now. Let's keep our powder dry until it makes sense to get those additional monies. So I'm just gonna focus on scenarios 2 and 3. And scenario 2 is, again, remember, we're doing everything in the master plan over the course of the next decade. We're trying to hit our benchmarks for the bond covenant and for our liquidity purposes. And we did not have we lost about 18 months worth of, call it, revenues from the planned increased rates projected in 23, 24 timeframe. Go ahead.
And I think a good point of that, losing the revenues for those 2 periods of time, you can think about it, if they were kept up with inflation, from an inflationary standpoint, you might say that's anywhere from 3 to 5% per year, so anywhere from 6 to 8%, 6 to 10% over that 18-month. So you're kind of starting from a position where you really haven't kept up for that period of time to catch up.
That's right. Time value of money sort of principle. So again, if you look at the scenario 2 estimated rate increases in 2026, the model that we're running solves for levelized rate increases beginning in 26 and beyond at 9%. Again, without those couple of years of rate increases, we're trying to play a little catch up, but we're not trying to overdo it either. We have a bottleneck based on where we have to bring on those CIP needs. And if we look at it isolated each year, yeah, maybe this year wouldn't have to be 9%, right? But we've got to do it in a way that we minimize sticker shock for our citizens, and we've got to be able to hit our financial covenants, and we got to bring on our infrastructure in a manner to stay on top of it and not have to incur expensive Band-Aid approaches. Then in scenario 3, if we get a little bit of support from the development coming online, whatever form that looks like, if it's in the form of revenues to the system or county contributions, we can buy it down, not quite a whole percent, but we get, call it 3/4 of the way there. So that's on the water side. And then on the sewer side, the next page, page 14, again, I'm gonna focus on 1 and 2. We're looking at roughly 10% levelized until 2029, and then we can drop it down for that, call it next period of projects, growth, et cetera, to 6.5%. Similarly, on scenario 3, again, we don't get all the way down to a full percent, but we're down at close to 3/4 at 9.3. So our observations are on page 15. The authority's system or number of accounts and flows have remained relatively flat over the past several years. However, we know the county is poised for some growth, and you've been approached by different developers. We know we got some commercial industrial customers coming online or using more if they're existing. Challenges facing the system. So implementation of the projects that the authority has identified in the master plan, which total $40 million over the next 10 years. The cost associated with building in future capacity for anticipated growth. Again, doing this master plan, some of that is sort of built into there, but it is something to be mindful of on the existing infrastructure as well. If we're replacing existing, are we just doing Band-Aid approaches, or are we just repair and replace, or are we gonna be strategically putting in more capacity along these lines along the way? And there would be additional, call it cost associated with increasing that capacity along the way, not just replacing old lines for the same capacity. Determining the appropriate balance between what the authority must maintain or replace for the existing user base and the growth the county is willing to support, and maintaining rates and fees at levels sufficient to meet ongoing needs while remaining competitive with surrounding peers. And again, we've always provided those peer comp charts to show where we're stacking, because each year, everybody is always in a different CIP cycle. So one year you might be, call it, out front of everybody, but over time, your rates should levelize again, and then others are gonna have to be implementing. So it's gonna be a jockeying for place on those charts over time anyway. Current reserves are at good levels, however, the authority may want to consider targeting, even if you don't change your policy per se or whatever, you may want to change or set an aspirational target throughout the year, higher than what you're currently at now, just so you don't get in a pinch during a fiscal year. But stave off those emergency needs and mitigate the potential needs for higher than normal rate or fee increases. I think we wanted to just note that the performers reflected here and just demonstrate that reserves will trend down for a number of years, but not dip below our policy targets. Again, as we're bringing on some of those master plan projects, either we're cash funding or debt funding, regardless in any particular year, there's going to be a couple years where we're tight. So setting our rates now at a level that keeps us above water will help us get through those years of bottleneck. If we neglect to raise from where we are, then when we get to that bottleneck, we could potentially get underwater with respect to our liquidity. And when you're going out to get funding for your projects, whether they're for your existing system or anticipated growth, it doesn't matter. Cash is king when it comes to the balance sheet and trying to get the lowest financing cost available to afford your projects. And I think that's with that.
When do you anticipate that bottleneck?
Let me look at scenario 2 real quickly. I think it's just a couple years out, really, so bear with me. I think I circled it in scenario 3, but it's 2027 and 2028, yeah, so just a couple years out.
All right, thank
And
you.
that's where your debt service is coming on for that the short-term
Right.
set of needs identified in the master plan. So that's roughly, I said a minute ago, it's like $12 million, I think, over the next couple of years.
Yeah.
So that's where you're bringing that debt on. But keep in mind, again, because y'all did the master plan and we know sort of what's identified out through the next decade, we've been able to stretch out our goal seeking for setting the rate increases much further than we have in the past. And we want to make sure, even looking out that far, we're not going to fall below the minimums for bond covenant purposes or for liquidity purposes.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Barrow.
I think RT just articulated very nicely why it's important to have a master plan as far as setting our vision and understanding where we're heading, and we can get our rates adjusted in such a way that won't shock the locality. I'm a little concerned about the 3% growth in expenses year over year. I think that's low, especially with the uncertainty right now. What happens how much will that affect us if it goes up to, say, 5%? Is that a significant amount? I mean, is that gonna break the model?
So again, it's picking a point in time at which to grow from on the assumptions, both revenue side and expenditure side. If you had an uptick in expenditures without a corresponding uptick in your rate increases, yes, it would be offset and you'd be tracking eventually on a trajectory for your expenditures to lapse over. But in the short time frame we're talking about here for the next year, we feel comfortable about the basis of the 9 and 10% for fiscal year 26. Time will tell over the next year when we're back in front of you again. We would hope that the financials for 2025 would solidify the uptick in your commercial and industrial-based revenues on the system. And if we wanted to project higher on expenditures, we'll see what they flush out to be in 25. I would hope, right, that the revenue growth for next year would outpace those expenditures. But we can always, if you want to run a forced scenario where we run the current setup and the only thing we change is the expenditure growth, I think in the short term, you're not going to see a material difference for 26 because it's only 1 year of 2% difference. But over the next several years, instead of being 9% on the water, maybe it jumps to 9.25 or 9.5,
Not that
depending.
much. Okay, all right.
It's not going to move the needle for for the current budget that you're considering.
Businesses especially, well, I guess we don't have as many industries on our system right now, but predictability is key.
Yes, sir.
And working with other localities, especially with big industries in the locality, they didn't care what the rate was. They just wanted to understand what was going to be in the out years so they could plan for it. Maybe that's not as important in this locality. But I think it's good to know which direction we're tracking. I like the idea that it's going to be $1 increase or a $2 increase per year for the next couple of years, assuming all things stay the same.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And that's why we do this report. Again, I know you said that this county might not care about it, but they do, because that's why we do the report, is because we want to give people a levelized approach, because you can budget on, like, even call it mom and pop living on a fixed income. If I know the next 5 years are going to be 9%, then I can at least put it in the household budget, right? And the $1 or $2 here and there. I think that's part of the basis for doing this report. So an industry looking to locate here would say, okay, well, they do a plan, they catch it on the website, and then their people can throw it through their model and say, does this make sense to us for locating here? Go ahead.
And I think, Mr. Perro, it's a good observation, a good concern about where, inflation is going with perspective to operating costs. 5%, it'd be great if we had a crystal ball. 5% we could see in the near term for a couple of years, probably given where uncertainties are right now. Running a scenario where it probably tails back a little bit in the long run, back to about the 4 to 3.5% range may at least in the most sense right now from that standpoint. We've done a couple of these other analyses with working with some other rate consultants, and while they think that 3% might be too low, 5 might be too long under a sustainable approach to kind of project that way. And I think the other point to make is that it's great that you've got a master plan in place. You've got identified those needs. What the scenario also does is if we do have inflationary pressures in the near term, this scenario 2, as well as scenario 3, assumes we're bringing on about $12 million of debt through FY27 based on the master plan. So to the extent there's ability to kind of prioritize and maybe kind of spread it out over a 5-year time frame might help that pressure to help offset some of the inflationary side.
Yeah. Thank you.
Board, any other questions? Continue.
I think that's pretty much it for our report.
Okay.
Again, if you have any other questions, if y'all take this home and read it over the next few days or week, and you have follow-up questions, and you want to funnel them through staff and maybe even request that we come back with an updated scenario or two, whatever you want, just let us know, funnel it through Tim and Richard, and we're happy to respond accordingly.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Oh, I see a green light. I have a green light now. Okay. We both did this coming from different directions. I put the budget together based on goals that we made last year and goals that I would like to see us approve for this upcoming year, and try to mitigate pain to our customers. It's our ratepayers that do pay us here. So just a little reminder, from 25, these were the goals that we had set. Utilize enterprise fund accounting, and we are there. No rate increase while covering inflation. That was my desire. Inflation last year was 3.7%. We were successful in doing that with consolidating our various funds and putting them into the Virginia local government pool, where we started off earning 5.5, we're earning 4.5% now, which is still a very good rate. But we generated well over $200,000, which basically was a 1-year rate increase. And this is where RT and I have a little different philosophy, and I understand his, and I appreciate he understands mine, that the income that we earn on our investments should be taken to our customers, whether it's for a capital project or for operating. And if it's a long-term investment, we can plan on it being there for operating, or at least make sure we're budgeting it appropriately. We eliminated the credit card fee, convenience fee. This to be more cost-effective method for our customers to pay, and we just need to evaluate whether that was a successful experiment or not. Through your support, we increased our salaries for our team. I don't think we're quite on the bottom of the barrel now, which is a good thing, because we're doing well that way. Our health insurance cost last year was 9%. We did offer a higher deductible plan to save our employees. Only one of the employees took advantage of that. Everyone else went the other way. We met our debt service requirements. We got to work on the fate of the raw water and gateway financing. And then we met our capital improvement needs, and we did our infrastructure master planning. So for 26, I propose these goals is to utilize the enterprise fund accounting with RDA. It's a work in progress. It's a lot better than we were, for sure. All the efforts of the finance team here in the county has been most appreciated. Minimize the rate increase. Again, December's CPI was 2.9%. Continuing increasing our salaries. I'm proposing a 3% COLA and a 1% merit pool this upcoming year budget. And this is a critical, from my perspective and our team's perspective, cover the cost of the increased health cost. We received a 4.7% increase. The entire pool was an average of 8.7%. And we really did a lot of investigating into the high deductible plan with HSA, where we can reduce our employee cost and reduce the cost increase for the authority at the same time, and putting more actual take-home dollars into our employees' checks. Again, we have to meet the debt service payments and requirements, meet our capital needs, and our infrastructure plan needs. So with this, I put together an overall operating budget with revenues of 5.358. We're ending the year higher than that, and that is from interest earned from our SNAP accounts, which I don't want to count for operating, because that's all part of arbitrage and all those things, so that we're purposely not including that in our budgeting. And then our expenditures, you'll see where we're going to be projecting to come out below. Again, as RD said, if we can do better, we can mitigate issues. And then looking at basically a $300,000 increase in expenses. Again, this slide shows where the revenues are coming from. And I budgeted for a 4% increase in water and sewer service charges. Again, the $200,000 of interest income, and the rest is just miscellaneous. Then our expenses, there's some slight increases here, and those are mostly due to salary increases. We're working hard to keep our costs low, coming out at the 5.35. Here's our health insurance. You want to go back one?
Back one, please.
Yes, sir. And this is a first run on this, okay?
What's driving the admin and general expenses and the customer account and collection expense increases?
The slight increases is in salaries.
Oh,
The significant cost of,
excuse me, maybe before I ask that question, what's the light column in the middle is what again?
that's anticipated year end.
Anticipated year end. So what drove the customer and account, the $600,000 difference there?
There's some cost savings, I believe, unexpended appropriations. I think some of it. And some of it is where we're trying to work with the RDA program to get all the property accounting.
So it looked like we budgeted 445,000, yet we spent a million. Did I read that incorrectly?
Hang on a second, I hit the wrong button. We budgeted for expenditures 5.226, and we're going to be at 5.264.
I was looking at line, right there, yeah.
This one, the difference is where the accounting system is pulling in for our VRS, our health insurance and all of that, previously had been in the A and G column, the 81230, and currently it's hitting the 82220.
So it's just an accounting thing.
It's accounting
That's-
thing.
I'd see the, okay.
Yes,
But, all right.
and we're working on that.
We're coming out on the wash fine. I was just looking at
Yeah.
the individual line items. Thank you.
And Stacy and her gang are working on this, trying to clean things up, and it's, like I said, we're far better than we were. Well, looking at the health insurance, the top line is our current plan, the Key Advantage Expanded, with our premiums. And this is the monthly premium for dual and for family plan. And a family plan basically is, the employee is paying over $12,000 a year. And this is based on the authority paying 80% of the individual and the employee paying 20%. On the dual, the authority pays 65% of the premium, and the individual employee pays 35%, and the same percentages on the family plans. What I'm proposing to be able to do is go with the high deductible plan, which drops our cost dramatically from $347,000 to $282,000. And I'm also proposing to change those percentages where we're paying 100% of our individual employee contribution, 90% on the dual, and 90% on the family. I'm also proposing to put in $2,500 into each individual's HSA account, and that totals $60,000. So of my $64,000 savings, I'm netting, $4,400, but we're putting that money back into our employees. I think that's what we should strive to do. Because the biggest concern that I have, and our team has, is we want to hire younger people, that will have families, and $12,000 of insurance premium that they're paying makes us not an affordable place to work. So I'm trying to address that with this.
At the same time, they'll be taking a deduction from a pre-tax deduction from their paycheck for an HSA contribution, right? Because you have to have a health savings account associated with
Yes,
this.
and I'm proposing that the authority puts up front $2,500 where the individual needs $3,300. The dual and family is $6,600. And the cost savings that these individuals will have, they'll be able to put that in, that pre-tax contribution in, if they choose to, or however they want to do it, into their HSA. Mm-hmm. And still come out ahead.
It's a good system if you can get people to buy into it.
Well, we're working hard on that. We're working hard on that. I have personally utilized that program when I was with Rivanna. It was very successful then. It's an informational program. So
From some experience in my company, I've learned that a sore point with that is and I'm sorry, I'm deep in the weeds here, but I would suggest that you watch out to make sure that the maximum out-of-pocket cost for a family is less than the maximum contribution amount for an individual into the HSA account.
Gotcha.
Thanks.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you for that. Going to our capital, and this is where things are kind of in a flux right now. looking at the revenues for the capital, there's a number of funding sources that we're going after to meet up with the actual proposed expenditures. And as was stated at the previous meeting where we looked at the master plan and how to make it happen and all of that, it has to go on our customers' backs. So we need to be very, very, very aware of all of that. This is where the revenues for the projects are coming from. 1.25 million is from our funding our depreciation. In order to make this function, I'm recommending at this time pulling a little over $1 million out of our cash reserves. We're sitting on $7 million right now, and it's been very steady that way. We have our connection charges that totals about $500,000. We have $2 million of federal funds that is moving forward. I have been very successful dealing with EPA and getting our project moving forward. So we will be receiving that $2 million. Part of it to refund what we've already spent on phase 1 and then the upcoming phase 2, the stabilization of the county had funded $1 million for sewer extensions, of which we've spent about $500,000 of that, looking at continuing moving that forward. County had funded $1 million of the Gateway ARPA with ARPA funds, of which we've spent probably about $100,000 by year end, looking at that. And then we had the long-term funding. I have submitted a preliminary application for FEMA for a generator grant. Did that on Friday, and first thing Monday morning, I'm receiving a message saying, please continue moving forward. Thank you for this excellent application. So I think right now it's looking good. And then there was work proposed in the infrastructure master plan in South Madison Heights area, $400,000 worth of improvements to improve fire protection. So, and then these are those very same projects that we've talked about. I did budget for $80,000. We did not replace any trucks this past year, and our fleet is dying, so we need to look at doing that. Beginning work on the Rice Shop Road pressure zone. Lakeview area that's the South Madison Heights project. There is $2.75 million in this proposed budget to move forward with AMI. The Williams Creek generator, I also have proposing $1.2 million for our operations center, if we can find the right place for it and can bring it in. 2 of the pump stations need, in our infrastructure master plan, they're to be upgraded, as well as the wastewater plants. So that's where those numbers come out, total of $10 million. And then also included in the capital is the principal payments for the debt services. So that's where all of that comes from. Any questions? I know I've moved through this fairly quickly. And it's, okay.
Board, any questions?
Okay.
Actually, I'll make a comment. I support the idea of moving the $1 million from the cash reserve and putting it into the capital plan. I like that.
Okay. So what I'm asking from the board today is to concur with the goals that I've set for the budget and that we're going in the right direction. If you want me to go in a different direction, I'm happy to do that. I'm not asking you to approve anything. We will refine these numbers and bring them back to you at the May meeting, where hopefully you will approve them for at least approve the rates proposed for public hearing in June. That is our schedule.
I've got no issue with the direction. I would ask that you get us a copy of the finalized numbers ahead of the meeting, so we
For
can
sure.
review it.
This has been we have been working very closely together and trying to make sure we get you what you need.
I I don't want to call it a concern, but I'd like to think about your proposal with the health savings account and the contributions to the employees for the health savings account. I think that's a very generous offer. I hope that it's appreciated. People prefer cash in the pocket a lot of times. Well, it depends on where you are in your retirement goals, but people a lot of times prefer cash in the pocket as opposed to appreciating the type of contribution that you did or you're proposing. I'm wondering. I'm just trying to get in my head. Is that the right number? Is it too much? Is it right? Or should we? Is that where we want to spend it? I'm thinking it probably is yes, but it's hit me. I'm thinking through it myself.
I understand.
But just wanted you to know that I'm looking at that and I'm processing it.
And if you have
And I'd
con-
love to hear maybe at some point what your reasons are behind why you think it's important, what it's going to do for the employees, why it's more important to give it back to the employees than try to do something else with it.
Along those lines, maybe you'd like to see some options rather than just that 2,500, maybe 1,500, 2,000. I mean, work some options in there.
I can put together other options. The main thing from my perspective, looking out for our team, is this is a completely new idea of going from a Cadillac insurance program to the high deductible. And I'm trying to make it as painless for everyone as we possibly can. That's my goal.
Also, is this a one-time contribution for this budget cycle, or do you see an ongoing in future years?
If we continue with the high deductible plan, I see us putting another contribution in for the HSA.
So if somebody doesn't have an HSA account, I see this as seed money to help them get ahead, because it's tough if you don't have any money in your HSA account and you get hit with a high deductible or with a situation early on and you need to pay for it, you don't have money in there to do it. So to have a little seed money in there is really nice. My company does something very similar to what, except it's a monthly, or it's installment by paycheck.
Well,
So maybe
I've
that's something for the later
I've looked
years.
at that. I've looked at that. And again, because this is such a dramatic change for everybody, to have the cash up front, should something happen in end of July, when we make this change, people have some coverage. That's my goal.
It's reasonable. I'm trying to think about this in terms of our policy. What is our policy for health insurance, or what is it that we want to do for our employees in health insurance? So sorry, I know I'm rambling around. I'm just trying to get my head. That's a new concept. It's a good concept. I think it's very thoughtful and forward-thinking about our employees. I know it's a change. Change is hard for a lot of people, and it's a good way to help incentivize that. I'm just processing the outcomes.
I understand that, because the goal is, one, for us to manage our own health costs, but also to bring it to the health insurance premiums down to the point where we become an affordable employer. Because currently it's very, an operator starting out at, our $30,000-$40,000, until they get all the licensures and start earning some more significant income. It's a hard sale. I mean, it's a third of your income goes to health insurance. The other third goes to the government. That leaves very little for groceries. So,
Do y'all have any issues with him going forward? Just bring us some options, get us the information ahead of the meeting.
you'll have it way ahead of the meeting.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you.
And I'm going to step. We did not recognize our operator, who he got squirreled up on the time, so
Okay.
he's not here. Seneca Haskins, I want the board to realize that he passed his Class 2 water operator's license recently. He went and took it once, in fact, and almost got it. He well exceeded on his second tour. And the average across the state is still under 30% pass rate. So we have a very, very talented young man working for our team now.
Good for him.
That's great.
Outstanding.
All right, next item, we'll move right along. I'll pass it back to you if you want to discuss that. It's the parallel feeder main on Route 130. You can borrow Claudia's now.
This was working. Alrighty, I did receive 2 proposals for the necessary engineering work to begin our Route 130 parallel water line. I received a proposal from Hurt and Profit and from Pannoni. There are significant cost differences between Pannoni and Hurt and Profit. Hurt and Profit, or Pannoni's, it was $251,079. Where Hurt and Profit is $69,100. And going through the proposals, $69,100, yep. Going through the proposals, what was missing of significance was geotech work that would need to be done. So they're getting me a rough estimate on that, $10,000 to $15,000, if that. So I would like for you to authorize me to move forward with a contract for engineering services utilizing Hurt and Profit for this project.
Board, any discussion?
Question, you said these scopes are equivalent,
They're equivalent except for the
except for geotech?
geotech. And depending on exactly where the line will be placed, will vary. The geotech work will vary in cost.
Construction administration included?
No, this is through bidding.
All right, so these are design documents only. What's the anticipated
And,
cost?
and going through the bidding process.
And so, okay, and the anticipated cost for the overall, anticipated construction cost is what?
It was 1.4 million was what was budgeted, what was recommended by our infrastructure master plan. And I had budgeted $200,000.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I'll move I'll move that we recommend approval of the executive director's suggestion to contract with Hurt Profit and move forward.
Motion on the floor. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Vote ayes, will any opposed? None. Motion passes.
Thank you very much.
All right, next item, sir, is the informational report.
Okay. The infrastructure master plan, we've already dealt with the Route 130 parallel water line. We're getting information from, for the manufacturer reps to deal with what's needed at the Williams Creek Pumping Station. The water plant staff is commencing on short-term needs at the water treatment plant, where we've budgeted $70,000. We've also had conversations with electrical contractors for the Abbott's sewer pumping station improvements. And then I have already previously reported we're moving forward with hazard mitigation grant program for the generators. And we had the results of our financial master planning in FY budgeting. The VWP permit process continues and continues and continues. DEQ asked us to provide information that we've already provided, so we showed them where we have provided it. And we put it in a different package, wrap it with a different colored bow, and I think all of that information should be complete. It was finally, the final questions were answered this past Friday. So but it continues to take time. I actually got honestly frustrated. I went and took 15 years of daily data, which fortunately was in monthly spreadsheets, and compiled it and provided all of the withdrawal data for the past 15 years and provided that to DEQ because their models were not coming up with the right answers. So hopefully all of that effort will be fruitful. The Gateway project, I report here that the revised layout resulting from the market study created some shifting of some units from senior care to patio homes. It's not going to significantly change the number of living units there, just the type. Their architect is working on the site layout as we're talking here, and they are still proceeding. We did get our plans for the force main that's running along Route 210. Was approved by VDOT, actually very quickly. And we're having the bidding documents drawn up now, and we will put that out to bid so we know exactly what we're trying to spend. Otherwise, it's still pretty much nebulous. The Seminole Plaza South Madison Heights, we actually had a very good meeting that Nate Young organized, where the county is working to come up with a FEMA BRIC grant to address stormwater and sewer system improvements. The owners were there. They are interested in participating. So I think if this grant doesn't come through, at least we've initiated a conversation with the owners for them to participate and get those sewer issues taken care of out of the plaza. The James River Bank Stabilization, our EPA rep is extremely helpful. I have to say that. I mean, she is very, very helpful. We got all the plans and specs to her for their review. They're completing their environmental review. CVPDC is doing the state required environmental review. So we're moving forward. We're on target to go out to bid on that project this summer, with construction commencing in November and moving that to conclusion. One thing we have been able to do is we located a good project access so that we will be working from the downstream end going up towards the park and not having to have all the heavy construction equipment come down through the park while it's in use. Our Campbell Street project, that finally got VDOT approval, and we are currently soliciting boring contractors to do the 600 linear feet of 2-inch force main. They are to submit that here by Friday, and we hope to be able to move that project forward as well, and that's being funded with the ARPA funds that was provided by the county. CVTC, there's no real changes there. No real changes with the SCAT Reg Advisory Committee I participate in. I do provide you some updates on a couple of the General Assembly issues that we've been following, working with developers dealing with the Trojan Road improvements and Grace Church development. And then, Mr. Martin, I was able to find that Virginia Rural Water Association has an EPA-funded grant program to assist small water systems. And so part of that program is to directly support Native American water systems. And so I put our technical person in, consult with them to take care of some of their operational issues. So, and that is all I have to report.
Thank you, sir. Board, any questions? All right.
Thank you.
Next item we have, we'll open it back up to citizen concerns, comments. Seeing none, I will close citizen concern comment. Moving on to matters from members of the board. Mr. Woods?
Nothing.
Mr. Para?
No, I don't, no, thanks.
Mr. Martin?
No, sir.
I don't have any at the moment either. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion on the floor by Mr. Martin. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you.